He's been saying that he was pressured into this attack by like Lindsey Graham and other GOP senators because he had impeachment hanging over his head. So the people who have been responsible for this debacle are actually Lindsey Graham and Nancy Pelosi. So who is the driving force behind this impeachment? So they're kind of good cop, bad coping him. The neocons are pressuring him into war. And actually, in October, I made a video on my channel saying that I believe impeachment was a form of blackmail that they're trying to use against Trump. Because at that time, at that very same moment, in October, was when he was trying to pull troops out of Syria. Suddenly, this impeachment thing is hanging over his head.
Syrian girl, I wanted to go to you here, and I appreciate you joining us. People say, who's Syrian girl? We go through her whole bio. You can go to her Twitter. Her family was a part of the ruling party there. She didn't like Assad. They left to Australia. She's been on the show for 7, 8 years. Very eloquent lady and very respected. You can find her bio and all of her information on her Twitter. And we like to get different perspectives on Syrian girl. Is it Partisan Girl and Patreon Syrian girl? If you want to find out her background, who she is and everything. I want to just get an update from her in a snapshot since Soleimani got killed a few weeks ago and what's unfolding there on where she sees all this going. Thanks for joining us, Syrian girl.
Thanks so much for having me on.
So just an update. Trump obviously has signaled that if any of the demonstrators get hurt, we may do something. I think that's good on the surface. That might encourage the opposition groups to launch attacks now to get Iran to attack them. And now we're kind of drug in by that. And I think that's what we've seen Restart and others kind of say.
Well, I think they're not going to do anything directly against Iran because yet last week, Trump actually did the right thing in not escalating further when the U.S. base was attacked. So I think that if a U.S. base gets attacked and they don't want to get directly involved with a war with Iran, like that's their casus belli right there. So I don't think we're going to see any of that. But like last week, I think I told you guys that Iran would retaliate without question. But I think the important thing to talk about now, I think, is that Trump was set up. I think that now we've learned that, as Per said, all that false intelligence about imminent threat was bogus. And actually, Trump said that, well, he didn't say that. There's an article that's come out by Business Insider that said that he's been saying that he was pressured into this attack by like Lindsey Graham and other GOP senators because he had impeachment hanging over his head. So the people who have been responsible for this debacle are actually Lindsey Graham and Nancy Pelosi. So who is the driving force behind this impeachment? So they're kind of good cop, bad coping him. The neocons are pressuring him into war. And actually, in October, I made a video on my channel saying that I believe impeachment was a form of blackmail that they're trying to use against Trump. Because at that time, at that very same moment, in October, was when he was trying to pull troops out of Syria. Suddenly, this impeachment thing is hanging over his head.
And then we had, as you mentioned, the Secretary of Defense kind of throw Trump under the bus. But now Obama's former national security advisor, James Jones, says Trump is right. So there is a lot of weirdness going on. And as you said, some of the Democrats behind the scenes have been pressuring with the neocons for Soleimani's death. Now they're talking about impeaching Trump for it.
Yeah, that's right. It's a setup. He's the fall guy. They pressured him into it, and now all the consequences that happened since is they're trying to make it his fault. Well, obviously, where did the false intelligence come from? It didn't come from him. So, at the end of the day, this is a debacle because they probably told him that Iran wouldn't retaliate. Probably they were expecting, so as Pompeo was tweeting that they're going to de-escalate and they're going to negotiate a new deal, but that's exactly the opposite of what anyone could see. Anyone who isn't a neocon could see that it was going to end up escalating, and the possibility of World War III was on the table. And I think that's why Trump decided to de-escalate and not retaliate. He realized it was all a lie, and it's interesting now that we have Putin talking to the United Nations about how the nuclear powers need to come together to neutralize the threat of global war, which is what we're facing.
Putin earlier today gave a speech. 5 nuclear-armed states must work together to neutralize the threat of global war. Here's some of what the leader of Russia had to say.
It's time to understand our responsibility, and the example must be set by the founders of the UN. 5 nuclear states have the responsibility to maintain the sustainable development of the mankind. These 5 nations must start with the measures of getting rid of the preconditions for the global war, coming up with approaches to come up with stability.
How do you think the deep state is going to come at Trump next? And what's the word on the Middle East? What's coming out of Persia?
Well, you know, these protests that are going on, the driving, as I told you guys, during the Arab Spring of 2011, you know, they were, at that time we were being fed this stuff about democracy, but of course it turned out to be the Muslim Brotherhood, which is what I told you guys in 2012. So at the moment, they're telling us that these protests in Iran are about, you know, women's rights and democracy, etc. But really, the driving force behind it is this group called the MEK, which in 2012 was delisted off the terrorist group list that the State Department has. So pre-2012, pre the Arab Spring, these guys were designated a terrorist organization, just like the Muslim Brotherhood. And what they are is like an extremist communist cult. So like, just because, you know, a theocracy that forces people into, you know, wearing a headscarf, it's a bad thing, doesn't mean like this communist cult is a good alternative. We need to really become more cynical about really what's happening in Iran. Obviously, it's related to current events. Obviously, the State Department and the neocons, they don't want the Iranian regime or government to be in power, and they are very skilled at, you know, putting a lot of money into these people.
All right, Syrian girl, thanks for the update. What do you think Trump should do about what the neocons are up to and what's happening with Iran?
You know, I think Trump, first and foremost, needs to name names. He needs to name who has been responsible for, you know, coming up with the false intelligence and pressuring him, Lindsey Graham, Nancy Pelosi, the impeachment. Also, he can take the opportunity now because Iraqi parliament has requested for U.S. troops to leave. And the neocons are threatening them financially because they want so badly to remain in Iraq that they won't respect the democracy that they supposedly set up. And they're trying to say that they're going to cut their access to the Fed in order to sell their oil and add sanctions on top of that. All this crazy stuff. Trump has the opportunity now to use that fact that Parliament is asking for a U.S. troop withdrawal to pull troops out. I know in October he wanted to pull troops out of Syria. They came up with this impeachment stuff to pressure him. He obviously wants to pull out. Otherwise, he wouldn't say that they're in Syria just for the oil. I feel like he's saying that just so he can humiliate the people around him that want to be in Syria and add, you know, because he does want to pull out. So I think that what he needs to do is defend himself and not be the fall guy on this Soleimani assassination by naming names and perhaps, you know, making more statements about possible pullout from Iraq and Syria as well.
Thanks for your perspective. I've got to say, though, you've been vindicated with the deep state, both Republican and Democrat, some of them trying to say Trump, you know, is a bad guy and Trump lied about this stuff. And then it comes out that they did give him that intelligence. It's just so Machiavelli how they operate. Syrian girl, thanks for the time.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you.
Don't act so surprised, globalist. You didn't think you could silence the American people, did you? Join banned.video, and I will complete your training. Together, we can overthrow the Emperor and restore the Republic.
The anti-human social engineers are masters at taking something really, really scary and turning it into a joke. And for many years, I played along with their gay frog joke until I discovered that it was deadly, deadly serious. We can have fun with this, but gay frogs are not a laughing matter. You know, Jimmy Kimmel and others have come out and admitted that they get direct orders from the deep state and the Democratic Party about the talking points they put out. They're the real propaganda arm. And going back 8 years ago when they started attacking me for the gay frogs comment, I thought, oh, they just think this is funny. No, ladies and gentlemen, it's to take toxic waste in the water supply, particularly municipal water supply, even aquifers, even well water, and make a joke about it, when the science is absolutely clear and it's devastating, not just amphibians, not just our little green friends, but humans as well. So cancer, breast cancer, testicular cancer, prostate cancer, all these other forms of cancer, like cancers of the blood, leukemia, that are connected to not just atrazine, but all these chemicals are serious business. That's why right now, David Hogg says it's bad that we're even selling these, but we're selling the high quality Alexa Pure system, rated as the very best gravity fed system out there out of hundreds of different units. And it's 30% off right now to start your year 2020 right and to get your whole body clean. The #1 way to purify your body, ladies and gentlemen, is to get your clean water into your body to help flush it all out. And the Alexa Pure water filtration systems at InfoWarsStore.com are all 30% off right now.